Good Neighbor Network, WGNS, Murfreesboro, Smyrna. Flagship station for MTSU Sports. Now an update from the WGNSradio.com News Center.
I'm Ron Jordan. Leaders in Murfreesboro have begun the process of bringing a massive sports complex to town. The City Council voted in favor of the zoning request for Legacy Sports and Entertainment Park at a meeting on Thursday. The proposed 250-acre project would be built on Broad Street, close to I-840, and would feature multiple sports facilities and a 6,000-seat outdoor arena.
And finally, we have JD XL. His name is John Daniel Power. Dude is super talented. He's from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is about 30 minutes-ish southeast of Nashville.
JD XL is John Daniel Powell, and that comes your way from Tennessee. He's only 22, but he's been smashing on the piano since about 15, and now he writes songs for JD XL, best in Tennessee, USA. Best in his orders, DJ John Daniel Powell, aka JD XL. So, professional pianist since age 15, writing chords and mixes on electronic tracks, does it really, really well. Spotted by Music Supremo Fred Cannon after falling off his roof.
What's up, Middle Tennessee? This is JDXL, and you're listening to my show. In the studio, I got Double A Mullane.
Hello, hello.
And D Smitty, and we're coming at you live on 100.5 and 101.9 FM and 1450 AM, and you can listen anywhere in the world at WGNSradio.com. You can also watch us live in the studio at Facebook.com/official JDXL.
Absolutely.
And so we got a very special guest on the radio right now calling in from Los Angeles, California. He's fresh off his Grammy Award visit. He has 4 nominations that he had this year, 2 from engineering Lil Nas X's new record, Montero, as well as Her's new album, Back in My Mind, and he's been engineering anything that Chris Brown releases since 2017, which, that's hundreds of tracks alone
just
right
a couple
there.
Songs, yeah.
Yeah, just a few. And he just mixed the new Kid Cudi track for the cinematic movie Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and he's a multi-platinum engineer-producer. Welcome to the show. Teezio, how's it going, man?
Yes, sir. How are you guys?
Doing good, man. Super excited to have you on. We appreciate you taking the time in the height of your career to call in, man.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. And first and foremost, congrats on all the successes you've had, man. You had a stellar 2021, and it's looking like your 2022 is shaping up just as good.
Yes, sir. I mean, 2021 was great, and then this year is turning out to be really good, especially Friday with Jack Harlow's First Class release.
Yeah, man, we were actually bumping that on the way here, man. I saw you promoting it. That's a fire track, man.
Thank you, brother. Yes, sir. I'm really excited about that one. I really have good thoughts about it.
Yeah, and he's actually coming to so we're located right underneath Nashville. We're in Murfreesboro, and he's actually coming to Middle Tennessee State University this month, actually.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, man.
Jack don't hit the South. He's from Kentucky, so he's definitely going to make sure the South gets every bit of him.
Nice, man. Well, I guess is there any chance of you making an appearance to Nashville and coming to that show?
Yeah, I probably won't, just because I'm going to be swamped after Jack. I'm on to the next thing. I'm trying to, I'm working on CB's album right now, trying to get it all finished up.
Yeah, and we're super stoked for that, man.
Yes, sir. It's coming.
Yeah, I saw that he was talking about it coming out this summer. We expecting as many tracks as the last couple albums on it?
Definitely not.
Okay. you finally told him, hey man, can you just let up a little bit on me?
Yeah, I said you gotta let up on these people, man. You're giving them so much music. He loves to give music to his fans. He loves for everyone to hear what he's doing in the studio. So I don't hold it against him. But we did it for the past 2 albums, and it was almost close to 100 songs between both albums.
Yeah, and I actually heard that you did 250 tracks, and that only 57 of them were released on the I guess that was that the Heartbreak on a Full Moon, or was that Indigo?
Yeah, for Heartbreak, and then for Indigo, it was close to that too. We roughly do, either way, whether we're releasing 57 songs or whatever, we're still recording about 250 to 300 songs depending, and then we're narrowing it down. So it was definitely a lot harder this time.
That's insane, man. So y'all actually do that every time, and then just go through it and select.
Yeah, he's always cutting. He's literally like at all times. You know, we're receiving records, we're getting in with writers. Like, it's a constant thing, you know?
Man, that amazes me because, I mean, you know, obviously Chris Brown, he could just easily just chill at this point. I mean, he's already accomplished everything there is to accomplish in the industry already, and then he's still just being a workhorse in the studio. He's got crazy work ethic.
For sure. I mean, most artists don't record all year. They record when they're doing their project, and after that, they kind of chill or go on tour or do other things, and then come back to when they're, you know, when they're ready to work on the next project. But CB kind of is just a 24-hour a day, sort of like 365 a year situation, you know?
Yeah, that's incredible, man. And I mean, what's crazy is that you have to mix all that. And I actually was watching you on another interview that you actually handle a lot of the administrative duties as well with the label.
Yeah, so basically there's a lot of stuff that, you know, there's a lot of people that are contributing to these records, and I'm usually the one in the room kind of seeing, like, who was there and, you know, what certain person came with another person, and make sure we know we get their name and everything. So it's a lot of stuff to keep, you know, to keep track of, to ensure that everyone is taken care of, everyone that contributes to the album is being acknowledged.
Right. And I heard you actually talking about some people send in tracks, and there's a chance that they didn't even write it or not. You have to investigate and make sure that they're actually the writers of the beat, or that they created it.
So a lot of times what happens is these things cross hands. Like, the person who I'm thinking, you know, the person who writes a record doesn't necessarily have the ability to get the record into my hands or into another engineer's hands who works for a big artist. So a lot of times those records have to cross multiple hands to get to us. And then when we get to that point, it's kind of like, okay, I know that you gave me the record, but who actually made the beat and who actually was in the studio? Whose voice is that demoing the record? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's insane, man. So, I mean, I know that you interned when you were, you know, 16 in a studio. Kind of where did you pick up a lot of that? I mean, is that something you just learned recently to you know, handle those kind of duties as far as, you know, the copyright and all that, sending it into the labels, or is that something that you kind of picked up in your past just along the way?
No, that's something that actually came from working from CB. So basically, like, it's something most artists don't work at this capacity. A lot of artists, like, the label is heavily involved, their management is heavily involved, the A&Rs are heavily involved, and what happens is the engineer almost at that point only has to do one thing, and it's just record the vocals, deliver the files to their superior, who might be the manager of the artist or the A&R. But in CB's case, it's like me and CB put a lot of this stuff together, and I coordinate with his manager to make sure that, you know, everyone is getting taken care of, certain files, what songs we're using, whatever, and then I communicate everything through the label, just because at the same time, it's like I'm dealing with the records on my own, because, you know, obviously I have to build a label, so I have to already have these conversations about the records and all this stuff, you know, already. Gotcha.
Wow, so I know I've seen you talk about that you actually select a lot of the beats, and then I guess Chris Brown also selects the beats, and y'all just kind of feed them to each other and kind of build off that together, or how's that process work?
Yeah, so I'll definitely get the beats. A lot of people just go through me because I'm the guy essentially coming to the studio, to the room. So I essentially file all the beats down into the tracks, into the hard drive. So essentially, like, I'll have every producer will have their own folder with a date, and so I'll intake beats. And then I'll go through them, mark the ones that I think are good or whatever. And then when we get to the studio and it's time to go through beats, it's not always time to go through beats, but when it's time to go through beats, I'll start going through those folders and first going to the ones that I've marked, and then from there going, you know, to the ones that I didn't mark that are still in the folder, just because we like to listen to, you know, a lot of beats and make sure that we're picking the right one before we just jump on the first one, you know?
Gotcha. So is it kind of like always open season with beats with Chris Brown, since he's cutting so many tracks? Like, I'm sure you probably have a lot of beats being sent to you on the regular in your email and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, tons of beats. And we don't discriminate against small or big producers. To be honest, it's a lot easier to work with the smaller producers. It's you know what I mean? Because you have a lot more leeway with what you can do. And so it's no discriminatory. We don't discriminate on any beats. We use any beats. It doesn't matter who it is. So it's not like we're just in there only working with the biggest producers and stuff like that. We got to give everyone a chance, because there's a lot of great producers out there that, you know, haven't had their chance yet, so you never know who you're going to find.
Wow. Yeah, so I love the story too. Speaking of that too, the guys that made the beat for Pills and Automobiles, that was a pretty cool story. How they had somebody hit them up, said, "Hey, we're gonna pitch these beats to Chris Brown," and then next thing they know, they end up hearing Chris Brown and several other artists on it, the features on the track, and then they ended up getting a plaque off of it. So I thought that was a pretty cool story.
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of do it like all they did was they sent the beat in, and then it's like me and CB did that song Pills and Automobiles in like 15 minutes because the hook is just wet over and over again,
right?
And then it's verse. And once we had that, it was like we kind of recorded that song and we're like, cool, next song. Like it wasn't anything like, oh my god, this song, whatever. It didn't have anyone on the song at the time when we first did it. And then after a while, we'd play the record for people and they're like, oh my god, this record is really good, da-da-da. And then it was like, okay, we should get some more people on it. So that's when we started to get the features with Boogie, and we got, what's it called, from Memphis? I can't even, I'm brain farting right now, but Yo Gotti.
Oh, yeah, Yo Gotti. Yeah, so you
and
actually...
That's bad, because I lived in Memphis, so I should know Yo Gotti's name without even...
Right. That's actually what I was going to touch on a little bit. So you actually lived in Tennessee and in West Tennessee and Memphis for some time. How was that?
It was actually something totally unexpected, but because I was working for Juicy J, and he was going through the process of, I don't know if you guys remember, they had a cooking show, the 3-6, well, they had a TV show back in the day. Do you remember the 3-6 Mafia TV show where they go to LA?
I don't know if I've actually ever watched that, man.
It's really ridiculous. I mean, it's definitely a lot older. I mean, I think it came out in like 2006. It was kind of coming off of the heat of the Oscars. But anyway, Juicy had moved here to LA. They were doing the TV show, all this stuff. That's when I met Juicy. And then we got to the point where he was like, okay, I'm out here in LA, but I'm good to go back to Memphis. So he's like, you want to go back to Memphis with me? I was like, shit, I don't have anything else to do. I might as well. So I moved to Memphis with him, and it was definitely a totally different environment for me because I grew up in Los Angeles. So moving to the South was like flipping the script on me completely.
Oh, I bet, man. And Memphis is...
The weather was killing me. I gained so much weight. I was just eating barbecue every day.
Yeah, they got some fire food over there for sure, man.
They definitely do. And that's all I did was eat and that's it. Eat and smoke.
Yeah, man. So how did you get linked up with working with Juicy J?
That's actually a crazy story because it wasn't even what you would think. It was just a random meet. But I was trying to work for this really rich lady in LA who like was crazy and she had money and she would have all types of celebrities at her house and all this stuff. And one time I went to her house because I was trying to intern at this studio she was going to build. So I was literally out of high school, 18 years old, and I was like, I'm going to intern at this studio this lady's building. I went to her house for one of those events where celebrities would come over, and one of the musicians that was playing, because she would have musicians playing at her house and everything, he's like, hey, man, are you an engineer? I said, yes. He said, I have a client who just got rid of their engineer and needs a new engineer. His name's Jordan. I said, well, is it paid? And he's like, yeah. So then my mind shifted from going, okay, well, I'm going to intern for this lady to this musician says he has a client that needs a new engineer, which is a higher position and it's a paid position. So I kind of was like, yeah, sure. So he kind of linked me up through text with this guy named Jordan. And when I got to Jordan's house, it was Juicy J.
Wow. So it's just a pleasant surprise for you all around.
Yeah, and I was from LA. I mean, the only real hint of 3-6 Mafia that I knew was them winning an Oscar and Stay Fly. So it wasn't like I was some massive 3-6 Mafia fan, which is good because Juicy's a very private person, and anytime people were around us that were like overhyped on, old 3-6 Mafia stuff, it was kind of like we don't really need that energy inside of his personal home, where he has his family and stuff like that. So it kind of worked out better that I wasn't all hyped on 3-6 Mafia when I started working for him.
Right. Yeah. Wow, that is a pretty crazy story for sure. Yeah, I listened to a little bit of that on some of your other interviews and whatnot of you working over there in Memphis. So that's the only two states you've lived in is California and Tennessee.
No, I actually spent some time in New York too. I had a little run out there. With there used to be a guy that used to manage the Peas, the Black Eyed Peas. His name is Venus Brown. He was a chairman over at BMG, and he had kind of taken me under his wing and moved me to New York. He got a studio in the city there at what's it called, at Quad. I don't know if you guys know Quad.
No, I'm actually not familiar with the New York scene too much.
It's a famous studio where Tupac came downstairs and he was shot in the downstairs elevator.
Gotcha. Okay.
But we actually had a room there, and I kind of had my run there, and that was obviously so hard on me. I mean, it was difficult being in New York, you know, not knowing anybody, and I was just there because I was under the wing of this person. But it actually ended up being good. I moved back to LA, and that's when things started to change when I got with Chris Brown.
Right. And I know initially whenever you got offered the position with Chris Brown, you actually kind of initially wanted to say no to it.
Definitely. I wanted to say no because there's a famous studio in LA called Record Plant, which I'm sure you guys probably may have heard of.
Yeah.
But it's a really famous studio, and Chris was basically like their main client. This is before I started working for him. Chris was basically their main client. Every single night they had the studio locked out for him, whether he came or not. Like, he was the main client there. And I would obviously be working in the music business, not with Chris Brown, but just with other artists. And so I'd be in Record Plant, working in other rooms and stuff like that. And I'd always see, like, Chris's room was this party room, and I'd see the engineer's face when he'd come out, and I was like, man, this guy just wants to go home right now. I could just tell. So I kind of got the feeling like, look, I don't want to throw myself into, you know, the unknown, essentially. Like, I don't know if they're going to like me or if I'm going to be able to, you know, do it. So I asked a few people, asked my wife. She's like, no, you should just do it. If you don't like it, then you don't have to keep doing it. You know, might as well just try it. So I did. And then, you know, at this time, Chris already started to change from that. It wasn't so much party. It was more work and stuff like that. So things started changing. I was getting older. Everyone's getting older. You know what I mean? Now he's 32.
Right.
So we've all kind of gotten out of that phase. I certainly am completely out of that phase. This is obviously in my early 20s when I'd see all this stuff happen. But I'm glad things changed, and they started to change slowly, because it was definitely a lot more manageable for me to work with CB than I'm sure it was for the engineer before me, you know, when things were a little crazier.
Right. He probably called you and was like, see what I mean? And you're like, no, this is great, man. I appreciate the
yeah,
position.
No, that's always the thought. Like, he's gonna be like, oh, you see, he's not gonna like it, are you? And I'm gonna be like, no, I actually love it.
Thanks for calming him down for me. Actually, I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
So you had already met CB before you started being his engineer?
So I'd met him. It was when I first took over, I hadn't met him, but I've seen him in passing, like, yo, what up? Like, you know, when everyone respectfully, when you're walking down the hallway of a studio and you walk by another person, everyone always gives the respectful, like, you know, what's up? You know, we're obviously both in the same building here for a reason. But then when it got closer to working for CB, I hadn't met him, and I had actually gone to the studio once or twice without him even showing up. Like, they were like, oh, Chris is going to work tonight, so I showed up as the engineer, blah, 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 and he didn't show up. So I was like, fuck, I haven't met this guy. I've already billed twice, you know what I mean, to the label for me showing up to the studio, and I don't even know the guy yet.
Right. Yeah, because I know...
So it was definitely a slow start.
Yeah, I was going to say, I noticed you said in another interview that you were kind of nervous just to kind of pop in there not really knowing him and just kind of take on the reins as his main engineer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, it was reaching a point where it's like, it doesn't get much higher than that in the recording world. You got Justin Bieber, you have Rihanna, you have Chris Brown, you have Ed Sheeran. Like, you can count on two people's hands the amount of artists that are at the elite top level of where you would say, you know, being a recording engineer for these artists. There's not that many. There's 20 and under. At the time, 2016 was, you know, 6 years ago. So music was a lot different 6 years ago than it is today.
Right.
There was a lot less artists. Social media and TikTok has kind of definitely
switched it up.
Music business
Yeah.
so cold, completely, and that wasn't the case in 2016. So things were a little bit lighter. There wasn't that many major artists. Now you have tons. You know, you have Olivia Rodrigo. You have all these artists that are just top tier artists at this point.
Yeah, I noticed you said too that, you know, Chris Brown, obviously it doesn't help that he's not just one of those guys that's going to come in and be like, oh, hey, how you doing? You know, bubbly. He's just kind of like, what's up? You're the engineer type situation, right?
Yeah, no, he's definitely like, you got to think about it. He's from Virginia. He's from Tappahannock. You know, he's from the South. He's not like one of these LA guys that's like, hey, man, nice to meet you. You know what I mean?
Let's vibe out, bro.
Yeah, you know, he came from a rough upbringing. I mean, he told me stories about how he grew up. I mean, he grew up with definitely a lot less than what I had, you know what I mean? So, like, he came up with a rougher upbringing, and people seem to forget about that when, you know, they see that he's a pop singer or an R&B artist, and they may think, you know, oh, this guy's had it, you know, all his life and a good life, but it's like, that doesn't represent what he really came from, you know?
Yeah.
So he's gonna be a little bit rougher on the edges, but he's a really nice guy, though, especially for being somebody as famous and as big as he is, and as much as he accomplished. He's a lot more. I'll tell you right now, he's a lot nicer than a lot of artists that haven't done what he's done.
Yeah, I actually heard you talking about, like, just in the obviously there's like a food court and stuff, I'm sure, in that facility, and then a lot of up and coming people kind of are rude to the staff there, and you were talking about how, you know, if Chris Brown's not being rude to him, then, you know, what are these people doing? Type situation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, you definitely need to. A lot of people will. That kind of sets the whole domino effect off. So if there's one artist who's treating someone badly, their entourage will automatically kind of mimic that, and it kind of starts to just domino effect. You know what I mean? All the way down, where it's like, especially like if let's say there's an engineer and the artist is like, yo man, what's wrong with you, man? You're messing everything up. Now the entourage is gonna start laughing at the engineer and be like, hey, man, it's your first day. So it kind of starts to domino effect, and that makes it worse. So it helps when everyone is kind of treated with respect, because I'm gonna tell you right now, when you get under pressure, you start to mess up more and more. So the more pressure you're on, the more you're getting yelled at, the more you're gonna mess up. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So take us to kind of your, you know, kind of what you like to use. I think you stated before you use mainly Pro Tools. Is that kind of your main DAW that you use?
Yeah, so Pro Tools is pretty much where everything happens. All the producers send files from all types of DAWs, from Free Loops, from Logic, from Ableton, but everything ends up in Pro Tools. And that's just kind of how the standard is, you know, especially for mixing. I mean, people can produce in all types of different programs, but as far as mixing and recording, 99.9% of the stuff is done within Pro Tools in the business, you know?
Right, yeah, I've noticed a lot of engineers, obviously you included, like to use Pro Tools for the mixing part. So Logic's kind
definitely.
of more recording, and then Pro Tools more for mixing?
Yeah, it's definitely more for mixing. I mean, a lot of people use... Sorry, my alarm keeps going off. A lot of people use Logic to produce, and it just goes to, like, a couple things. Is the sound. So Logic sounds slightly thinner, not as much headroom as Pro Tools has, just in the algorithm of how the programs are essentially coded, right? FL actually has the most. So FL actually has better headroom, and it sounds way better when things are hitting hard in FL than they would in Pro Tools. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say that Pro Tools is like the best, but it has become the standard, and it sounds great, and it's really easy to edit. You know, it's a lot harder to edit things in FL. It's a lot harder to edit within Logic as well. Cutting those regions and fading and moving and reversing things is a lot harder to do within the realms of Logic than it is Pro Tools.
Gotcha. So obviously I know you primarily do the engineering and obviously do administrative work as well. I've heard you talk about arranging the beats. You know, when someone sends it in, you kind of arrange it, you know, the way you want. And I guess CB obviously trusts you with the arrangements. Do you also make some beats as well with Chris Brown?
So I don't really have the time. In the beginning I would, especially when I was recording, only recording and not mixing, and CB really worked at night. So during the day, I would have plenty of time to either get in with other producers, produce and stuff like that, but it's kind of just gotten to the point where now I'm just collecting beats, and essentially we have an agreement, you know, where I get things placed, and this happens in every realm of music. It always happens where the passive hand includes, you know, breaking people off, and that what we were speaking about earlier, when I get a record, it's passed to two or three hands, that's going to show in the splits, you know what I mean, these two people that we went through. So that's kind of how it is with the beats as well.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know, man. So do you master the tracks as well, or do you just primarily mix them and arrange them?
No, yeah, we don't master. So in engineering, there's always, like, when you get to a certain level, obviously there's a lot of engineers that they mix, they record, they master, they do the whole nine, which is great, because a lot of these small artists, they can't afford to necessarily pay the engineer, and then they go and they pay a big mixing engineer, and then they also pay the mastering for that stuff. So, but when you get to this level, the recording engineer and the mixing engineer are two separate jobs, and the mastering is a completely separate job that I don't even deal with at all. Like, I trust the professionals that I deal with. There's a couple mastering engineers, Mike Tucci and Dale Becker, that are my favorite mastering engineers, and I trust them. And I say, you know, here's the mix. If I can change anything to make it better for you or make it easier for you to achieve certain things, whether it be volume or clarity or whatever, let me know and I'll make the changes. So it's definitely something that happens, it's a communicative thing where I'm getting someone else's ears on this, and they're giving me feedback in real time, and they're like, no, this sounds great, let me do this, and then they'll send me the master, and I'll say, hey, you know, there's too much low end in the master, can you back that down and match the reference being my mix better, because I essentially want the master to be exactly what the mix was, because that's what the artist approved.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I want it to be louder and bigger and cleaner and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So it can definitely get messed up, and that's why the mastering is one of those things. Like, obviously, mixing can mess up a song. That's obvious, because there's all types of moves you can make to just mess everything up. But with mastering, you can really mess some stuff up, and the problem is that that's the final stage. So meaning from mastering, it goes to the DSPs, to the label. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need to make sure you vet all the masters, because you'll hear one mix and say, this is good, send it to mastering, and then deliver it, and then when you hear it come out, it sounds totally different. So the mastering is a huge part of mixing and releasing the record, you know?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's just enhancing what's already there. So I've heard you say previously, too, that whenever you left Memphis, you felt like you were going to be kind of starting, you know, all over again, because I think you had maybe some ties that were severed between the producer you were working with. You know, I know you were kind of worried moving back to LA to kind of feel like you had to climb back up the chains in the music industry. How would you kind of describe the challenges you faced kind of getting back to the point you're at now?
Yeah, so it's crazy to think about, because when you're there, you don't really know, and that's the worst part, is just not knowing what's going to happen. But when I left Juicy, I was like, okay, you know, and he would always tell me, like, no one else is going to hire, because I used to mess up so much and on all types of stuff. And he's like, no one else is going to hire you. I'm the only one that's going to hire you. So I came back to LA, and I was like, I'm literally never going to be in the studio again with a big artist like that again. And I felt like I had to start from zero again, which was getting in with smaller artists and getting in with smaller writers and kind of rebuilding. Obviously, I still had the past, right? So I still had worked for Juicy J. So coming back to LA, I had something on my belt to say, you know, I had done this, but it was definitely felt like starting over, because it was a complete halt in the direction I was moving. But it actually was a blessing, because if I had stayed with Juicy for, you know, who knows how many years, I may not have been here in the place that I am now.
Yeah, and I'd say you're in a better position, obviously now, slightly than you were in Memphis. So.
but unknowing, though, obviously you don't know these things. You think that what you're in now is better than what may come, because what may come is unknown.
Yep, hindsight's 20/20.
Did you ever have people that were like, man, I know, like, you know, maybe it's rough or whatnot, were they trying to, like, convince you to not leave Juicy, or did you have just kind of, like, people that were telling you, no, yeah, you should go? Like, how was that support system?
So I had a friend, and I remember he would tell me, there was a guy named Tito, and me and him kind of became like a little engineering duo back in the day, back in like 2011. So after I had left Juicy, before I had left Juicy, I'd met Tito, and he was kind of already telling me, like, look, man, I know you're doing all this rap stuff, but I'm over here working with Darkchild, who's a producer, with Lady Gaga and Beyonce, and Britney Spears came in the studio the other day to lay some stuff and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, you're over here working with, you know, at the time that Gaga Beyonce song had come out. I think it was called Bumblebee, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. They were like in a video in like a pickup truck or something. But he had like worked on that song, and I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, I'm over here doing mixtapes with Juicy J, and you're literally like doing pop records with Beyonce, you know, and Gaga.
Yeah. Right.
So he was like, you got to get out of the rap world, man. You got to get into the pop world. And so people were already telling me, you know, because in L.A., it was a little different. You know, 3 6 Mafia in the South was a big name, but when you come to L.A., now you're dealing with, you know, Beyonce, got all these big artists that are much bigger than the rappers that we're working with in the South.
Absolutely, man. Well, now you're doing everything at once with the Breezy records. He's got every style in one album coming out, so I know that's quite a challenge.
No, I think that kind of fed into it, because I was so into hip hop and then working into R&B. It kind of allowed me to figure out how to mix records with a lot of bottom, but at the same time make them clean, which is what R&B sort of required. You couldn't have distorted messed up vocals with R&B. You had to have clean, polished vocals. And that's kind of what gave me the ability to mix pop records now, where they hit and they have that low end, but you still have that clarity on top. Like the Lil Nas X record, I would consider to be a pop record, a popular record, but it has elements of hip-hop and has that low end, but the vocal is very clear on top, singing top line, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, we wish we had another 30 minutes, but we're actually out of time, man. I really appreciate you calling in. It's been an honor to interview you and chat with you. If you want to stay on the line a second, I'll talk to you for a second after the show.
Sure, that'd be amazing. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. Bye.
From the WGNSradio.com News Center.
I'm Ron Jordan. Leaders in Murfreesboro are approving zoning for that massive sports complex. The city council voted in favor of the request for Legacy Sports and Entertainment Park at a meeting on Thursday. The proposed 250-acre project would be built on Broad Street close to I-840 and would feature multiple sports facilities and a 6,000-seat outdoor arena. A study shows the economic impact of the park could generate $350 million within 5 years. Tennessee's Attorney General is appealing an injunction blocking the General Assembly's new state Senate redistricting maps. The injunction was issued on Wednesday, saying the map violates the state constitution in its numbering of the districts. The General Assembly was given 15 days to fix the map, or a 3-judge panel will impose a map for the 2022 state Senate elections. Tennessee AG has filed an emergency motion to stay the lower court's ruling. A bill that would allow ivermectin to be sold over the counter in Tennessee has passed the state Senate. The bill was introduced by Senator Frank Nicely earlier this year and passed by a vote of 23-6. Ivermectin is generally used as an animal dewormer, but there are human doses for specific treatments like lice and certain skin conditions. It's been the subject of controversy during the COVID-19 pandemic because some people insisted it be used to treat them despite no evidence that it's effective against the virus. The House version of the bill is under consideration. And the Murfreesboro Emergency Communications Center is one of the first 911 centers in Tennessee to implement an innovative new technology called Q-Hit Power Engage to track citizen satisfaction and feedback after a 911 call. I'm Ron Jordan reporting.
The Good Neighbor Network, on air and online at WGNSradio.com. Rutherford County's most trusted source for local news.
Hi, this is Amanda from Animal City, inviting your family to come do business with my family, Northwest Broad Street in Murfreesboro. If you're a pet lover, come see us at Animal City. We have 8,000 square feet of pet products and pets for you to enjoy. Here at Animal City, we carry a full line of pet products to help your pets stay healthy, happy, and well. Animal City is Murfreesboro's longest running and only family-operated pet store. Come see us at Animal City, 919 Northwest Broad Street in Murfreesboro.
You don't have hot dogs or apple